Welcome. This is one of my first Facebook Lives. My name's Jenny Bracelin, and we're talking joyful and motivational tax paperwork. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I was really hoping an accountant would do it. I've hoped for years an accountant would do it, and none of them have. So, as a money coach and business mentor, I decided it was time to step up and do something about it and get people excited and motivated about their tax paperwork to get it done and it not be a trauma. And last week, one of my clients drove 10 miles to show me a piece of tax paperwork because he was so stressed about it. And please don't do that. There's no need. Well, you're welcome to send it to me, but there's no need to get stressed about it. So in this guy's case, what happened was he'd worked out his tax wrong, he'd worked out his figures, he'd done his adding up wrong, and they'd written back to him to tell him. And so he didn't really understand the letter, and actually they'd reworked it out in his favour, so he actually got to pay less tax. So all that stress and worry and panic was for nothing. And that's usually the case. So today we're going to cover 5 joyful reasons to enjoy and get motivated by your tax paperwork. So today's live is for anyone who's self-employed. It doesn't matter whether you're just starting out or whether you've been self-employed for years and are quite experienced. I'm sure you'll get something from my 5 reasons to be joyful. So let's start then. So my first reason is to look at the tax paperwork differently. So when that bit of, that bit of brown envelope comes through the door with like black heavy writing, do you go, how exciting, I wonder if I've got a refund? Or what most people do is put their glasses of ignore on. They don't want to see anything. They're like, la 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 la, I can't see that tax paperwork. No, 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 nothing to do with me. And they put it in a drawer and ignore it, or they get angry about it and it's like, oh no, the tax officer written to me, what's happened? Maybe it's really serious. But most of the time, it's just a notification. It's just saying you've got to do your tax return, or we've received your tax return. They actually only write to you 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year, so it's not a lot. So you can take off those glasses, and put something a little clearer on to see what you're doing. So I was very fortunate that I've had a lot of refunds. So when I get tax paperwork, I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's a refund. How much is it for? And so they get me excited. So if you can shift from ignoring it through anger to into neutral, maybe interested in what it's got to say, and then kind of maybe one day you'll get into excited and celebrate it. It's always a thought, isn't it? So it's about changing relationship with the tax paperwork and the envelopes. So that's my first tip. Change your relationship to those envelopes, emails or phone calls coming through. My second reason to be joyful about tax paperwork is because people worry so much, and so it's worth just looking, what's the worst that could happen? Really, like, what is the worst that could happen? So a lot of clients say to me, I could go to prison. Really? Do you know anyone that's gone to prison for tax paperwork? Like, really? I don't know anyone. And I've been in business nearly 30 years. I've had 5 businesses. I've been a business mentor for 25 years. And I don't know any clients or any people who weren't clients, like through my colleagues. Like, I don't know anyone who's gone to prison. I've read about a couple of cases in the paper in 30 years, and they defrauded the tax office of, thousands and thousands of pounds. But for your kind of average self-employed person, I think it's very unlikely you go to prison. Like, definitely less than winning the lottery, but very, very rare. So what would happen? So if you're not going to go to prison, what's the worst that can happen? Well, you could get fined. Like in the UK, you get fined £100 and told to pay the tax. So let's think about this. All these years of months and worry and angst and actually it's £100 and a bit of tax. That's it. It's not that bad, is it? Really? Not that bad. You can be joyful at that. So it's not worth worrying about something that's so unlikely to happen. So I've had one investigation in 30 years, and my accountant unfortunately was ill, and so he didn't handle it. And I only found out about it 18 months later, by which time the tax office were quite angry. So I got quite an angry letter and I went, as people do. And then when I kind of calmed down and read the letter, they wanted a copy of one invoice. And I dug it out and I sent it to them. And they went, thank you very much, you owe us a £100 fine and £235 in tax because it was put in the wrong category. And we're talking big category. We're not talking like, I made a mistake putting it under phone and it should be under, kind of stationery. It's like actually I put it under capital gains tax and it should have been under income tax to kind of put it more technically. So it was a kind of big mistake on behalf of my accountant because he did it, but obviously we're ultimately responsible. But the consequences, the worst that could happen, was a £100 fine and £235. That's it. Again, do you know with a tax investigation, chances are they probably did a lot of worrying and actually the outcome wasn't that bad. Or even if it is bad and you've got to pay a few £100,000, chances are you've earned it, hopefully. And also, it's still just money, it's not worth stressing your heart and your health and your mind and ruining your day, week, month, year. It's just tax, it's just one little government department that, is there to collect money from the public and businesses and distribute it in the country. So that brings me on to our third reason to be joyful about tax. So I can't see comments. Oh yes, brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I can. Brilliant. Okay. So the third reason to be joyful about tax paperwork is that, have you ever had an inspection? Have you ever had like, oh, we've written to you and we're going to come and inspect your books. Now, I was very fortunate when I started my business and I was VAT registered. And in London, they investigate VAT businesses every single year. So every single year, they come and look at a sample of your bookkeeping. And you can imagine the first couple of years, I was quite nervous about it. But the first year, she worked it all out and said, your figures are incorrect. And I was like, thinking, kind of, I'd go to prison because, people go, like, get really about it. I was £86 wrong. And it was in my favour. So they paid me like £12 something. And I thought, oh, this isn't too bad. And so it kind of started my association with the tax office and refunds. And after about 3 years of being investigated every year for tax, because that's what they do, I just stopped worrying about it. I was like, oh, okay, I've got a tax investigation today, no problem. And now I don't fret about it because it's just one of those things, part of being a business. And, I talked about tax and actually, I think it's kind of important to kind of pay some tax because I want to contribute to the society I live in. I want to know that people are taken care of and we have support systems and, we're safe and well in a country. And so I'm happy to pay tax. I don't want to pay too much, but I don't want to pay too little either. A nice balance of tax is a great thing to do because it makes you feel proud to be part of your country and your community and also to contribute. And so I sleep well at night knowing that I've contributed to the area I live in and the country I live in and that, I've done my bit. So that's another reason to be joyful. What else? Okay, so let's take a little detour and for number 4, let's talk about motivation. Because I know, because when clients come to me, they kind of haven't done their figures maybe, and they certainly won't have done their tax return and often leave it to the last minute. But once they've had a few sessions with me, that kind of changes because they realise the benefits of getting their tax return in promptly and doing their figures. So my business mentoring and my business is all about making you more money in a simple, positive, relaxed, joyful way. So if you want to make more money, the kind of couple of things you need to do is one is you need to know your figures. So doing them regularly helps. So I know a lot of people leave it till the end of the year and do a whole year's tax in one sitting. I mean, oh, the horror of it. I need the glasses. Oh, the horror of it. I can't imagine. I just can't imagine how awful that must be to do. I did it 1 year just to see because I like to test things out and experiment. And it was a very quiet year. I had most of the year off. And it was horrible. You couldn't remember what the receipts were for. It felt never ending. It took days. It was just, excruciatingly painful. And it reminded me of, say, trying to cook a whole year's meals in one go. I mean, that would just be endless and tedious, and it would suck the joy out of everything. So I really would highly, highly recommend that you do it monthly. Because monthly, you can do it in an hour. I mean, once you get good at it, you can do it in about 20 minutes every month. So if you do it monthly, then at the end of the year, like, I just press a button on my Excel spreadsheet that adds it up. And then I have a cross check to make sure it's right. And that's kind of done. So it's really ridiculously simple. And then I just create a little checklist, which is kind of one of the practical tips for you. It's create a little checklist the next time you do your tax paperwork of what you need to check. So it's like, right, add up the year. Do I need to add any PayPal fees, which is kind of one of those things? Do I need to get anything out for the accountant? Okay, anything else? No. And it takes me about an hour to do my end of year. I mean, obviously, I'm a business mentor and money coach, but even before that, it would certainly take me less than half a day. So when it's that quick, it's not very bad. It's kind of quite joyful. And I always celebrate it because I think it's a huge achievement. You know, you've finished a tax year, you've done the paperwork, you've submitted it. So I always celebrate. So I go out with some friends, I, crack open a bottle of bubbly, I, just go out and celebrate it, treat myself to something lovely. And in fact, when I ran my first business, when I submitted my tax paperwork, that was my time to start planning my holiday. So I start planning my holiday. And then when I paid my tax bill, and with the money left over, because I was just saved a little bit extra, that would pay for my holiday. And so the first year, I think I went to stay at a B&B in the winter in Cornwall, which was lovely, but it was, not ideal in January. But over time, I kind of made more money and saved a bit more money, and then I used to go to Cuba for a couple of weeks. So I used to go dancing in Cuba in January, having a fantastic time. So everyone was in January in the UK thinking, oh, I've got to pay my tax bill, I've got no money, da da da, all those kind of thoughts that are quite prevalent in society, as that's how it is. And I'd be off in Cuba dancing in the sun because I paid my tax and already submitted my paperwork months and months and months before. So I associate submitting my tax with celebrating and paying my tax with going on holiday. So therefore, for me, it's extremely joyful to, do my tax paperwork because I associate it with going on holiday. I'm just going to have a drink. So other reasons to get motivated about tax. So as I say, clients, when they come to me, get motivated to get caught up because I offer them really exciting things to do with figures. And if you're not very good at maths, it doesn't matter. So my background is I was a ballet dancer, and so I didn't train in maths. And I taught myself business finances like in the early 90s. And I went kind of on lots of workshops and things like that to try and learn it. I found it quite frustrating because accountants just, for me, don't speak English. They speak accountant. And, we want them to speak accountant because then they can talk to the tax office. And also they're quite detailed people. So they're very much, it's got to be precise and it's got to be right. And my accountant used to give me cake if I got my figures right, which wasn't very often, I have to say. So I used to bring my own cake, in the early years. But yes, so they're kind of quite detailed. So if you ask an accountant for a reassuring answer on something, you may not get it because they kind of want to be absolutely certain and detailed and clear. Whereas I'm a money coach, so I'm looking at, well, it's less than £100 out. The tax office probably aren't going to worry about it anyway. So yeah, be relaxed, it'll be fine, be fine. Because it is only, if you get it wrong, £100 fine the tax. So by doing it in April, you get to kind of see how the last year was. And that's getting onto the making more money, because once you know what happened, I'm sure you found it in your example, in your experience, that when you've gone through your tax paperwork, you've noticed things that you spent that you think, oh, I didn't realise I spent that much, or it's that expensive. Next year I'm going to spend less, or I'm going to spend more, or actually if I'd done that I could have increased my income. And you have all these thoughts about your books and your your bookkeeping and your figures. And we often don't capture them because by the time we put our tax paperwork in, we're like, don't look at that for another year. Whereas actually, if you can kind of get it out, there's a wealth of information in there. If you're new to doing figures, then just working out your net profit, which is the money in less the money out, is your profit, and then working that as a percentage. It's a very simple calculation. And if you want to book a free 15 minutes let's chat with me, I can work it out for you and show you how to do it. I used to have it written on the back of my calculator for a few years because I couldn't remember. But that is so useful because people talk about net profits, and if you're in a service business, you can get your net profit up to like 75%, which means for every £100 you earn, 75% is your money to go and spend on whatever you want. Whereas sometimes when the clients come to me, they've got like a 20% net profit, and I'm like, no, we can get that up. And that's just about playing with those figures, playing with it, coming at it with a joyful, positive, and motivational attitude. And you look, oh, I never realised that. And you just see all these things. It's about putting the glasses on. I've got my clear glasses on now. So seeing all these things. And just by playing about with your figures for an hour, you can often kind of double your personal income because you see things differently and you go, oh. So definitely making more money with it. What else have we got for motivation? Yeah, the only thing is, if you start getting motivated, joyous about your tax paperwork, you might have to find something else to moan about, because everybody loves to moan about tax, I've noticed. Whereas I don't, I don't think I'll find something else to motivate, to moan about. And yeah, the other thing is, as I say, tax is a part of business, and like getting a customer, I mean, I don't celebrate when I get a customer, I celebrate when I get paid by a customer, because that's coming into my business, that's making me money. And so when I pay my tax, I celebrate because it's a big achievement. Okay, please put any questions you have in the comments and I'll get to them at the end. So the final one is reasons to be joyful about your tax paperwork is it makes you more money. Like my client, when he finally calmed down and looked at the letter, he could see that actually he'd worked his figures out wrong and he was going to pay less tax, which meant he got to keep more money. So often with these things, if you know about them and learn about them, you can make more money. I mean, I understand that I'm not perhaps, I'm maybe a bit quirky, but I've been on tax workshops and finance workshops because I think it's interesting, and whenever I do, I make lots of money. And I remember organising a wonderful talk by my accountant. So I asked her to do a talk on some of the kind of more advanced things you could do with your books or accounts at the end of the year. And she was quite shy, but she did an amazing job of explaining it, how to price yourself, and all these kind of little tips and tricks that kind of accountants learn with their training. She passed on to us. And whereas we used to have about 20-25 people to our regular kind of monthly business group, that day we only had eight people. And it's because when you mention finance, people go, oh, no, don't look at it. And those 8 people were like, this is amazing, I had no idea. And they all made more money out of attending that talk, which was about 40 minutes. So it wasn't even, a whole boring day. And she was very interesting. So there's so much kind of joy to be had and money to be found and motivation to be had. Because if you suddenly think, oh, well, if I do a client that way, I can make double my money. That's going to make less work, give my customer a better service, and make me more money. That means I could work 4 days a week instead of 5. I mean, hey, surely that's motivating. Okay, anything else? Yeah. I think just to say this year, the reason I've done it this year is because more people are looking at their finances, and I think almost every self-employed person has gone, okay, what's my tax returns? Let me look at my previous tax returns, which is something that I find people avoid like the plague. But yeah, they've looked at their tax returns in order to qualify for any government support. And it's very easy to just look at it and go, oh, I haven't done very well. And they start giving themselves a hard time, hitting themselves on the head and going, oh. Whereas actually, if you can look at it in a neutral way, there's always possibilities in there. and you can make cash. It's the pencil case my husband bought me, which I think is fantastic. But yes, there's gold in those books and there's gold in those tax returns. So please be joyful about them and get motivated. So a quick recap. So we looked at taking off your "it's going to be terrible" glasses and putting on, let's see if it's a refund glasses. We looked at what's the worst that can happen and realize it's not that bad, and actually you spend hours worrying for something that will probably never happen. So just chuck out the worrying and enjoy it. We've looked at, being inspected and how it's not nearly as bad as you might think. It might be nerve-wracking the first time, but with practice you'll get better at it. Then we looked at motivation, and that doing it in smaller chunks makes it much easier and less of a mountain to climb. We looked at doing it promptly, and so that you can get it off your to-do list, it doesn't drag on, and also you get the figures and the information earlier to use in your business. And we've also looked at the benefits of paying tax and contributing to your community. And lastly, we've looked at getting into this kind of finance and bookkeeping and that kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be a big job. As I say, we're talking about an hour a month will make you money. So on the first of the month, every month, I always put a post up saying it's the first of the month. And the reason is because if you do everything tax and financial on the first of the month, you answer those letters or read those letters, open the letters, you do your books, you work out your net profit for the month, you create your financial plan for the next year, next month. As I say, when you're with a bit of practice, this takes less than an hour. Then it means that from the 2nd of the month to the 31st of the month, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about tax or paperwork or anything like that. You can just get on and enjoy your business. So do it all in one day and then relax the rest of the time. So thank you so much for watching. Please notice your reaction to being invited, to attending, and to how you feel about your tax paperwork, and just see if you can move it a little bit towards the more positive end, because each inch you move forward will make a big difference. And so one of my kind of slogans is be positive about money, because when you're positive about money, you see opportunities that otherwise you wouldn't, because you've got those glasses on. And lastly, if I can help, please book a 15-minute free chat with me. I'll be happy to talk through your tax paperwork, how to make more money, and obviously your business in general, because that's what I do. I help people make more money in their business in a joyful, simple way. So thank you very much for watching, and please ask any questions now. Thank you. All right, if you've got any questions, let me see if I can work out how to do comments. Well, yes, I can imagine your face. Thank you very much, Deb. Sounds amazing, Jenny. Thank you. Okay, we've got an accountant on the call, so thank you for turning up. I really appreciate that. And she says, is it worth mentioning if there is a lot of tax to pay, which is increased by class 4 national insurance, then it's possible to agree a scheme with HMRC to pay in instalments? So that's a real technical thing, and it's quite interesting because when you talk about tax paperwork, people often ask technical questions, like, can I claim my petrol receipts, for example? With actually, that can be a default. That can be a kind of decoy if you start asking kind of practical tax questions. Sometimes you genuinely want to know, but often I find people ask me, they say, well, I don't know how to do it, or I need the answer to that before I can get on with it. Whereas actually, it doesn't matter what it is. If you can get on with it and then you're left with a question, either contact me, your accountant, look on Google, you can find the answer. So often it's a way of putting off your dealing with your tax paperwork. But actually, that's a great question, and HMRC, particularly at the moment, are doing things by instalments. So right now we're on the 21st of January. So if you're in the UK, you can pay your tax by instalments, you can pay your national insurance by instalments, and but you do have to submit your return and start paying by the 31st of January. And also, if you haven't applied for your grant, you need to do that by the 27th of January. So that's a few little tax practical tips. And yes, the grant. So I've had a few clients who felt, or a few conversations with people who feel they're not worthy of the grant, which is a bit, oh, I just want to hug you. Don't say that. And it's very simple. Look at your books, and if you've got gaps when they've, like my books, I can see when all the lockdown announcements were, because every time there's a lockdown announcement, my income takes a dip and then it catches up like a week later or 2 weeks later. So if you are not earning the money you would be earning due to the lockdown, please apply for the grant. Please apply for the grant. It's, because that's what it's there for. So please don't suffer. Okay, and there's another one in February. So if you've applied for the grants because you're working or your work isn't up to its usual kind of, I don't want to say standard, that's the wrong word, the usual kind of level, then there is another grant to be claimed in February, for February, March, April. Brilliant. We've got thank you very much. I'll be in touch. So yeah, thank you very much for that. There. Brilliant. Okay, well, we're 26 minutes in. I think that's close enough. It's always good to finish things like tax paperwork early. So I'll say thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you every happiness, joy, and motivation with your tax paperwork and business finances in future. I'm Jenny Bracelin, business mentor, money coach at iexplainmoney.co.uk. Thank you very much.